You're confident. You're strong. You're beautiful. You're the greatest of all time.
The Michael Jackson biopic that just hit theaters cost Sony Pictures $155 million to produce. They hired the best directors, the best writers, the biggest budget for music rights in film history. And yet, there's a 48-hour period in Michael Jackson's life that didn't make it into a single frame of that movie. A period so explosive, so well documented, that its absence isn't an accident. It's a choice. In those 48 hours, Jackson sat in a room with two men who would later testify under oath about what he told them, what he showed them, what he admitted, and Sony owns the rights to that footage. They've had it locked in a vault since 2003. The question isn't why they left it out of the biopic. The question is what happens if that footage ever sees daylight. Before we go any further, hit subscribe. I cover the forbidden stories the industry doesn't want told. Every week, new evidence, new revelations. You won't find this anywhere else. Now let's talk about what Sony is protecting and what it cost them to keep it buried. Michael Joseph Jackson was born August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana. His father, Joe, ran the household like a boot camp. Rehearsals at dawn. Mistakes got you hit. By age 6, Michael was lead singer of the Jackson 5. By age 10, he was a global phenomenon. What the world didn't see was the boy who slept 3 hours a night, who missed birthday parties for recording sessions, who learned that love was conditional on performance. That childhood is the foundation of everything that came after. The obsession with perfection, the inability to trust anyone, the belief that the world would abandon him the moment he stopped being exceptional. Fast forward to 1982. Thriller drops, 7 top 10 singles, 66 million copies sold worldwide. Jackson isn't just a pop star, he's a cultural force. The Thriller music video cost $500,000. MTV played it on repeat. Michael Jackson wasn't competing with other artists. He was competing with the concept of entertainment itself. And he was winning. But the higher Jackson climbed, the weirder things got. In 1983, he bought a hyperbaric oxygen chamber because he believed it would help him live to 150. By 1985, he tried to buy the Elephant Man's bones from a London hospital. The media loved it. Wacko Jacko was born. Jackson hated that nickname, but he also fed into it, because controversy sold records. Then came 1987. Bad album, Bad World Tour, 123 concerts. Jackson performed for 4.4 million people, made $125 million. He was 29 years old and operating at a level no human should sustain. The tour ended in January 1989. For the first time in his life, Michael Jackson had nothing scheduled. He bought a ranch in Los Olivos, California, 2,700 acres. He called it Neverland, named after the island where children never grow up. And that's when the accusation started. 1993. A 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler told a psychiatrist that Michael Jackson had sexually abused him. The LAPD opened an investigation. The media exploded. Jackson canceled the second leg of his Dangerous World Tour, citing dehydration and painkiller addiction. He checked into rehab. And in the middle of all this chaos, Sony made a decision that would define the next 3 decades. They didn't drop him. They doubled down. In 1991, Jackson had signed a $65 million deal with Sony. Dangerous sold 32 million copies. But now, with allegations swirling, other labels would have cut ties. Sony didn't. They renewed his contract in 1995 for $80 million, the biggest record deal in history. Why? Because Michael Jackson's catalog was worth more than his reputation. Thriller alone generated $10 million a year in royalties. As long as people kept playing his music, Sony kept printing money. But there was a problem. The Chandler case wasn't going away. Jordan's father was pushing for a criminal trial. Jackson's legal team knew that if this went to court, the details would be ugly. So they made an offer. In January 1994, the Jackson family paid the Chandlers $23 million. The criminal investigation continued for a few months, but without the witness, the DA couldn't proceed. The case was closed. Jackson went back to making music, and for a while, it seemed like the storm had passed. But storms don't pass. They go dormant. In 2003, a British journalist named Martin Bashir spent 8 months filming a documentary with Michael Jackson. It was supposed to be redemption. The documentary aired in February 2003. 27 million people watched, and what they saw wasn't redemption. It was a man who seemed disconnected from reality. Jackson admitted to sharing his bed with children. He said it was innocent. He said anyone who thought otherwise had a dirty mind. The backlash was immediate. The Santa Barbara County DA reopened the case. This time they had a new accuser, a 13-year-old boy named Gavin Arvizo. He appeared in the Bashir documentary, and now his family was saying Jackson had molested him. In November 2003, 70 deputies raided Neverland Ranch. They seized computers, hard drives, photographs, and hours of video footage. Jackson was arrested, mugshot taken, bail set at $3 million. He posted it the same day. The trial was set for January 2005. And here's where the story takes a turn Sony never wanted to talk about. In the months leading up to that trial, Jackson's legal team recorded his private conversations. Hours of footage. Jackson explaining his version of events. Jackson coaching his team on how to spin the narrative. Jackson breaking down on camera, admitting things his lawyers told him never to say in public. That footage was never meant to see a courtroom. It was attorney-client privileged, protected, but it existed, and Sony knew about it because Jackson didn't just have a legal team. He had a media team, a crisis management team, a brand protection team, and all of those teams reported back to Sony. Sony wasn't just his label. They owned 50% of his music publishing catalog. They had invested hundreds of millions into his career. If Jackson went down, Sony's stock price went down with him. So they were involved in every decision, every strategy session, every piece of evidence. And some of that evidence ended up in Sony's possession. Not because they asked for it, but because Jackson's team sent it to them, as proof they were protecting the asset. The trial lasted 5 months. The prosecution called 140 witnesses. They presented photographs, medical records, and testimony from former employees. The defense attacked the credibility of the accusers. They painted the Arvizo family as grifters. And on June 13, 2005, the jury came back, not guilty, on all 14 counts. Jackson walked out a free man, but he was not the same person. The trial destroyed him, financially, emotionally, physically. He left the United States and moved to Bahrain. He barely made music. He was 46 years old and looked 70. Sony moved on. They still owned his catalog. They still collected royalties. Jackson was irrelevant to that revenue. His legacy was the product, and the product was bulletproof. In 2006, Sony paid $95 million to buy out Jackson's half of the Sony/ATV music publishing catalog. Jackson needed cash. He was drowning in debt. Neverland was in foreclosure. He agreed to the deal, and Sony became sole owner of one of the most valuable music catalogs in history. Then came June 25, 2009. Jackson died of acute propofol intoxication. His personal physician, Conrad Murray, was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Jackson was 50 years old. Within hours, Sony's stock price jumped. Thriller re-entered the Billboard charts. The footage from his planned comeback tour became a documentary that grossed $261 million worldwide. Sony released posthumous albums in 2010 and 2014. They turned his death into a business model. In the 10 years after his death, the Michael Jackson estate earned $2 billion. Sony took their cut of every dollar. But here's the problem. As Jackson's legacy grew, so did the questions. In 2013, choreographer Wade Robson filed a lawsuit claiming Jackson had sexually abused him for 7 years. Robson had previously testified in Jackson's defense during the 2005 trial. Now he was saying he lied. In 2014, James Safechuck filed a similar lawsuit. Both cases were dismissed on statute of limitations grounds, but the allegations didn't go away. In 2019, HBO aired Leaving Neverland. It featured detailed testimony from Robson and Safechuck. The documentary was devastating. Radio stations pulled Jackson's music. The Jackson estate sued HBO for $100 million. And Sony? They said nothing. They didn't pull his music from streaming platforms. They didn't cancel album releases. They didn't distance themselves from the controversy. They didn't issue a single statement. Because to Sony, the allegations were noise. The catalog was signal. As long as people kept streaming Thriller, as long as wedding DJs kept playing Billie Jean, as long as TikTok kids kept dancing to Beat It, the controversy was just free marketing. Negative attention still drove engagement. Engagement drove streams. Streams drove revenue. The math was simple. The ethics were irrelevant. But behind the scenes, they had a problem. Some of that privileged footage from 2003 was starting to leak. Not to the press, not yet, but to lawyers working on the Robson and Safechuck cases. And those lawyers wanted to depose Sony executives about what the company knew and when they knew it. They wanted discovery. They wanted documents. They wanted emails. They wanted to know if Sony had actively participated in covering up evidence of abuse in order to protect a revenue stream. That's when Sony's legal team went into overdrive. Sony fought those depositions hard. They argued attorney-client privilege. They argued work product doctrine. The courts mostly agreed. Most of the footage stayed buried, but not all of it. In 2021, a partial transcript surfaced in a legal filing. It was heavily redacted, but what wasn't redacted was damning. In the conversation, Jackson admitted to his lawyer that he knew the sleepovers looked bad. He said he didn't care because the kids needed him. He said they loved him. And then, in a moment, his lawyer immediately tried to walk back. Jackson said something Sony has spent 20 years trying to keep out of the public record. He said he understood why people were afraid, because he couldn't explain the feelings he had. And when his lawyer asked him to clarify, to say explicitly that nothing sexual had happened, Jackson paused. The transcript notes the pause. 11 seconds of silence. Then Jackson said he wanted to take a break. The recording stops. When it resumes 40 minutes later, Jackson is back on message, denying everything, blaming the media, playing the victim. But that pause, those 11 seconds, that's what Sony has been protecting. Now here's the kicker. In 2023, Sony greenlit a biopic about Michael Jackson's life. $155 million budget. Antoine Fuqua directing. The Jackson estate fully involved. The movie covers Jackson's childhood, his rise to fame, his creative genius, his struggles with his father. It covers Thriller. It covers Bad. It covers the 2005 trial. But it doesn't cover the Bashir documentary in detail. It doesn't cover the Robson and Safechuck allegations. And it absolutely doesn't cover those 48 hours in 2003 when Jackson sat in a room with his lawyers and said things Sony never wanted anyone to hear. The official line is that the biopic focuses on Jackson's artistry, his impact on music and culture. The estate says they wanted to tell a complete story, but not one that dwells on allegations that were never proven in court. Sony says they gave the filmmakers creative freedom. The filmmakers say they made the movie they wanted to make. But anyone who's worked in Hollywood knows how this works. Sony didn't have to censor anything. They just had to make it clear that certain topics were off limits if the filmmakers wanted access to the music catalog. No Thriller soundtrack, no movie. So the filmmakers made a choice. They told the story Sony wanted told. And the story Sony wanted told is the one where Michael Jackson is a misunderstood genius, destroyed by a cruel media and false accusations. The control Sony exercises over Jackson's narrative goes deeper than just the biopic. In 2016, documentary filmmaker Dan Reed started working on what would become Leaving Neverland. He interviewed Wade Robson and James Safechuck for hundreds of hours. He built timelines. He gathered corroborating evidence. And when he reached out to people who had worked on the 2003 case, he hit a wall. Former lawyers wouldn't talk. Former investigators had signed NDAs with penalties that could bankrupt them. Former Sony employees refused to go on camera. One employee agreed to meet Reed off the record. They met in a parking garage in Burbank. The employee told Reed that Sony had a classification system for the Jackson materials. Level 1 was public, concert footage, interview clips, behind-the-scenes content. Level 2 was restricted, financial records, contract negotiations, internal strategy memos. Level 3 was the vault, the 2003 recordings, the nuclear option. The employee said there were 47 hours of footage total. And in those 47 hours, Jackson talked about everything. His childhood abuse, his relationship with his father that bordered on psychological torture, his plastic surgeries and why he kept going back for more, his vitiligo, and why he chose to bleach the rest of his skin rather than darken the patches, his marriages to Lisa Marie Presley and Debbie Rowe, and how both were strategic arrangements as much as romantic relationships, his children and his fears about their safety, and his relationships with young boys. The footage was organized by topic. Jackson called them clarity meetings, sessions where he tried to make his legal team understand his worldview, his belief system, his philosophy about love and innocence and childhood. And in those sessions, the employee said, Jackson revealed things that would make both his defenders and his accusers uncomfortable, because the truth wasn't as clean as either side wanted it to be. Jackson didn't fit the profile of a predator, but he also didn't fit the profile of an innocent man. He was something else, someone who genuinely believed that what he was doing was love, even if the rest of the world saw it as abuse. And that ambiguity is exactly what Sony has spent millions to keep out of the public conversation. Reed never got access to the footage. His documentary aired without it. The Jackson estate sued HBO, and Sony remained silent throughout. They don't defend Jackson. They don't condemn him. They just keep collecting checks. Which brings us to the vault, the literal vault where Sony keeps the 2003 recordings. It's in a climate-controlled facility in Culver City, California, the same facility where they keep master tapes for thousands of albums. The footage is on hard drives, backed up on tape, indexed, cataloged, and sealed, and completely inaccessible. Sony has a legal team whose entire job is to make sure that footage never becomes public. They've fought subpoenas from civil attorneys. They've fought FOIA requests from journalists. They've fought members of Jackson's own family who wanted to see what's on those recordings. And they've won every single fight, because the footage is protected by multiple layers of legal privilege. Work product, attorney-client communications, trade secrets, and because Sony has unlimited resources and isn't afraid to spend them on lawyers who know how to bury things permanently. But here's the thing about secrets. They don't stay buried forever. Someone always talks. Someone always leaks. The question is when, not if. In 2019, former Sony paralegal Christine Avila gave an interview about her time working on the Jackson case files. She didn't reveal anything specific. She couldn't, legally. But she said if the public ever saw the full recordings, the conversation about Michael Jackson would change overnight. She said there are moments where Jackson drops the mask, where he stops performing, where he's just a man trying to explain something he knows sounds insane. And in those moments, you see a truth more complicated and more disturbing than either side is willing to admit. Avila was fired 3 weeks after that podcast aired. Sony said it was unrelated. They said her position was eliminated as part of restructuring. She tried to sue for wrongful termination. The case was settled out of court, terms confidential. But the message was clear. You don't talk about the vault, so why does this matter? Why does it matter that Sony left 48 hours out of a biopic about a man who died 15 years ago? Because the Michael Jackson story isn't just about Michael Jackson. It's about power. It's about who controls the narrative when billions of dollars are at stake. It's about how much money can buy silence, how much influence can suppress truth. And it's about the fact that in 2024, one of the most valuable pieces of evidence in one of the most famous legal cases in modern history is sitting in a vault, protected by an army of lawyers, completely inaccessible to the public, because a corporation decided that their quarterly earnings report is more important than historical transparency. The biopic will make money. Probably a lot of money. People will watch it. They'll cry during the thriller sequence. They'll feel nostalgic for the king of pop. They'll leave the theater thinking they've seen the full story, but they haven't. They've seen the story Sony paid $155 million to tell. The story that protects the brand. The story that keeps the catalog valuable. The story that preserves the mythology. The story that makes sure those 11 seconds of silence stay buried forever. And maybe that's fine. Maybe the truth doesn't matter as much as the legend. Maybe Jackson's music is bigger than the man who made it. Maybe his cultural impact outweighs whatever darkness existed in his personal life. Maybe we're all complicit because we keep streaming his songs, humming his melodies, teaching his dance moves to our kids, even though we know the questions will never be answered. Even though we know the vault exists. Even though we know what's being hidden. Or maybe, one day, someone with access to that vault will decide the truth is worth more than their job, worth more than their pension, worth more than their non-disclosure agreement, that the recordings deserve to see daylight, that the public has a right to hear what Michael Jackson said when he thought no one was listening, when he thought the cameras were off, when he thought he was safe. Until then, we're left with a $155 million movie that tells us everything except the one thing that matters. What happened in those 48 hours? What Jackson said? What he admitted? What he couldn't explain? And why Sony has spent 2 decades and millions of dollars in legal fees, making absolutely certain we'll never know. If you want to see more stories the industry doesn't want told, subscribe now. Next week, I'm breaking down the Warner Brothers vault and the footage they're hiding from the Kubrick estate. You won't believe what they found in there. And if you made it this far, click the video on screen. It's about the Disney executive who disappeared after threatening to expose what's really in Walt's locked office. See you in the next one.